First, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Bakakudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. Tiberius Julius Alexander. All right. Sure, certain, some brothers are familiar with his name. Okay, Tiberius Julius Alexander, who was an Israelite. Okay, he was an Israelite that was in a high position during the Roman Empire. All right, but he was one that had, you could say, forsaken his heritage in order to, gain that equestrian status, and ultimately partook in the destruction or the coming against Jake. All right, by the Romans. Okay, during the siege of Jerusalem. Which the siege of Jerusalem. It's interesting how Yahushai prophesied about the siege of Jerusalem. Okay, years before it happened. All right, decades before it happened. All right, showing you the power of prophecy. Right now, during the siege of Jerusalem, we know that of course the Romans sieged Jerusalem, but it wasn't just that they just got up one day and said, "Hey, yo, look, we just feeling like sieging Jerusalem right now, so let's just go and do it." All right, there were a series of events that led to that. All right, but I really want to focus dealing with this individual, Tiberius Julius Alexander, and the part he played, all right, as an Israelite, helping the Romans, all right, with his authority, and even killing Israelites, killing certain Jakes, all right, because during this time, from 66 to 73, 74, all right, during the Roman, Jewish Roman wars, it wasn't a small thing. It wasn't a light thing. All right, and there's a reason these nations feared Jake, because Jake, as we're gonna read, man, Jake, when the spirit got on them, man, these Romans came with armor and weapons and all that, and Jake was still holding their own. Right. So now, before I read this, I'm gonna go here to the book of Luke, chapter 21, verse 20. All right, and this, as you read up above, you'll find out that this was Yahushua speaking to his disciples about signs, because they had asked. All right, when you jump up to the 7th verse, it says here, and they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? Now, when you read this in the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter, they ask him what are the signs of his coming and of the end of the world. And he basically went through things that would happen, some shortly after he left, and some thousands of years later, which is the times we're in now. Okay, but a lot of these verses in here were also really dealing with 70 AD, that siege. Okay, so this is the book of Luke 21 and 20, and it says, And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. So what was the desolation or the destruction of Jerusalem? It happened during the siege of Jerusalem. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe at this time Peter and Paul were already dead. All right, they were put to death by Nero. All right, but some of the other apostles might have been alive. I know John, obviously John, the apostle John, had to have been alive and survived this. All right, doesn't say exactly where he was, but let me actually look this up. Let's look up Apostle Peter death. Let's see what they give us. Man, and this is another reason why these devils got to go. Because look, who the hell is this? Who the hell is this guy? Man, these people, man. All right, let's see if we can find his death. All right, if they'll give us a date. Let's see. Death. All right, so it says here, theologians Donald Fay Robinson and Warren M. Schmaltz have suggested that the incident Acts 12 and 1 through 17, where Peter is released by an angel and goes to another place, really represents an idealized account of his death. What the hell are these guys talking about? Which may have occurred in a Jerusalem prison as early as AD 44. Excuse me? Let's take a look at this. Acts. Damn, man, these guys. Oh, man, oh, man. And you know, people actually see that and believe it. All right, now let's go here to the book of Acts, the 12th chapter. So there's this whoever this guy was, who is this? This theologian Donald Fay Robinson is basically saying that Peter died. All right, when he was released by the angel, he died. That was his death in prison. So how come it talks about him returning? Hold on, what? How come it talks about Peter returning to the church? It says prayer was made, right? And he returned to the church. Excuse me? Now, you know what? Let's do something here. Let's type in Peter. And since he died in Acts the 12th chapter, let's see what we get. Once this thing loads up. And his name comes up quite a lot. But let's see. So interesting enough, in Acts the 15th chapter, which is a continuation, Peter's here. All right. It says he rose up, right, through much disputing and so on and so forth. So Peter's here, alive in some series of events that take place after he was cast into prison and the angel delivered him. Okay, he was alive, right, but he died in prison. These guys, man, these guys, man. Let's see. So I'm not really seeing. Let's just type in, when did Apostle Peter die? All right, so they say St. Peter is believed to have died as a martyr for his faith, although his death is not described in Scripture. Numerous writers of the time, or shortly thereafter, describe his death as having occurred in Rome during the reign of Emperor Nero in 64, according to tradition. So 64 CE or 64 AD, which is maybe about 2 years before 66 AD, which is when Jake started really rioting and, you know, coming up against the Romans. All right, which when you do the research, it was really due to this individual. I think he was the procurator of the region at that time. His name was Gessius Florus. All right, which at this time, of course, you had zealots, you know, that were anxious to overthrow Rome, but because of this individual pouring fuel on the fire, it sparked that, you know, that spirit in Jake, you know, to be tired of it and not have it anymore. So now let's look up, when did the Apostle Paul die? So right around the same time, they say. All right, 62 to 64. Okay, so they weren't, like I said, they weren't alive during this the siege of Jerusalem. All right, or around this time period. Now, it says because they died shortly before, and it says here that the Roman army. Actually, I'm going to start again. The siege of Jerusalem in the year 70 CE, which I don't even think I started reading this. I believe I was here in the book of Luke, Salakia. So as we're reading here, Yahushua prophesied about this siege, about the Romans, as he says, compassed, right? When Jerusalem is compassed with armies, that happened when the armies of the Romans sieged Jerusalem. It says, then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them, and you had a lot of people that fled down to Masada, which was another stronghold. Okay. It says, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, meaning don't stay in Jerusalem because it's not going to end well for you. It says, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. All right, so, and that's exactly what happened in the book of Josephus. It gives some details as to how brutal it was, especially once the Romans got in there. Nobody was spared. People try to hide in various different places. They try to flee, all right, but it was to no avail. A lot of people were killed, and a lot of them were sold into slavery. okay, as an aftermath or a result. So let's look at this individual, Tiberius Julius Alexander. And it says here, Tiberius Julius Alexander was an equestrian governor and general in the Roman Empire. And they were like a higher class. All right, it says that the equites constituted the second of the property-based classes of ancient Rome, because in Rome you were classed based on what you owned, right? So your land, and so on and so forth. All right, so it says ranking below the senatorial class, a member of the equestrian order was known as an equus. All right, so he was basically high up there, and also because his father had a lot of connections. All right, now it says here was an equestrian governor and general in the Roman Empire, born into a wealthy Jewish family of Alexandria. See, so he was an Israelite. All right, because you had a lot of Jake in Alexandria in Egypt. It says, but abandoning or neglecting the Jewish religion, he rose to become procurator of Judea in 46 to 48 under Claudius, while prefect of Egypt in 66 to 69. He employed his legions against Alexandrian Jews in a brutal response to ethnic violence, and was instrumental in the Emperor Vespasian's rise to power. In 70, he participated in the siege of Jerusalem as Titus's second in command. He became the most powerful Jew of his age and is ranked as one of the most prominent Jews in military history. And basically, during the time of 66, all right, up until the siege, you had Jake, the let's say the Zealots had actually taken over, and for a period of time, Jake was actually sort of like doing their own thing, autonomous to a little extent, where they were even mining, their own currency. But that didn't last long. Okay. Now, as this was going on, you had this sort of like this nationalist revolt going on both in Jerusalem. You had Jake that were in Egypt, in Alexandria, Egypt, that were also revolting. And that's why it says here that being that he was prefect of Egypt, he had authority in there. He basically sent his legions in there, and he warned them, but Jake didn't listen. So of course he slew a lot of them. All right, brutally, as is gonna say when we go down. And at this time, when this first started, you had Nero. Okay, I believe the year 69. All right, you had the year of the four emperors. Okay, let's see, year of the four emperors should be 69. Yeah, 69, and that was when Nero died. And you had Galba, Otho, and Vitellius, and then lastly Vespasian. Okay, now while Nero was still alive, he gave the order to Vespasian, all right, which was basically like a general, right? And he gave him the order to go over there with his armies and go and basically take down those Israelites who are revolting. So as Vespasian did that, and he came down on his way with his son Titus, they came starting up from Galilee on down to Jerusalem. All right, as this was going on, Nero had committed suicide, and you had Galba and Otho, and it was basically chaos in over there in Rome. So it got to the point where Vespasian pretty much left his son Titus in charge to continue the siege. All right, and you had this individual Tiberius Julius Alexander had his legions and so on and so forth pledge allegiance to Vespasian as the new emperor. And then Vespasian went back to Rome, and taking out Vitellius, he basically became the new emperor of Rome. All right, the Flavian dynasty, which this is covered also in the book of Second Ezra, the 11th chapter. All right, but as it says here, he became. We read this part, so now we're gonna go down to what role did he play in the siege of Jerusalem. All right, and it says here, siege of Jerusalem, Vespasian moved rapidly to Egypt, leaving the Jewish war under the command of Titus. At the same time, Alexander, as a proven commander with experience of Jewish affairs, was sent by Vespasian to join Titus as his chief of staff and advisor. So because he was familiar with Jake, he had been a procurator of Judea, so he knew how Jake was. He was an Israelite himself. All right, he was an advisor to Titus in terms of, all right, how do you go about, you know, successfully completing the siege? Because it wasn't an easy. They had various defense walls. You break through one, then there's another line, then you break. I mean, it wasn't easy. All right, but it says the let's see, second only to Titus himself. The siege of Jerusalem was conducted by 4 legions, and even after the city walls were overcome, the defenders held out in the temple. Alexander participated in an initial decision not to destroy the temple, which would remain an ornament, but to quench the fire. But because it was the Lord's will, the temple had to be destroyed. Because the Lord Yahweh Shai had also mentioned that. Okay, but when he was really referring to himself, all right, his temple being destroyed, Israel thought that he was talking about the actual temple. Okay, but later on, as we read in Luke 21, he prophesied about the desolation of Jerusalem, and guess what? The temple was in Jerusalem, so it also got destroyed. Now it says 2 subsequent assaults by Jewish forces were repelled, and the survivors retreated to the inner temple. All right, in a sortie, according to Josephus, they clashed with Roman troops tasked with putting the flames out, and one enraged Roman soldier threw a brand into the sanctum, destroying it. Josephus's accounts of the sequence of events and of who was responsible is highly contradictory, though as in rabbinic tradition, both this and the earlier destruction of the temple were due to the Most High's will. All right, as I mentioned, Nebuchadnezzar and the Romans being but his instruments, he makes Titus willing and unwilling to destroy the temple, depending on what passage of his works one relies on. Nevertheless, this was an Israelite that was helping the Romans, all right, in the siege against fellow Israelites. And when you go up a bit, I wanted to read this part dealing with what he did to the Jews um, in Alexandria. Okay, so it says here in 66 or in May 66. Now this is still dealing with Tiberius Julius Alexander. It says after Corbulo had backed them, Nero appointed Alexander prefect of Egypt, one of the 2 most prestigious posts available to an equestrian, along with prefect of the Praetorian Guard. All right, now I'm going to come down just to hit the main point. Yeah, it says the year he assumed office saw the outbreak of the first Jewish-Roman war in Judea, and aggression inevitably spilled over into the large Jewish community of Alexandria. See, so that spirit, caught fire also in Alexandria. An outbreak of ethnic violence during a Greek assembly escalated when the Greeks took prisoners, leading the Jewish side to threaten to burn the assembled Greeks to death. So Jake wasn't playing. Alexander sent mediators to calm the Jews, warning he would have to use the Roman legions if violence continued. The threat was ineffective, and Josephus describes the outcome. And guess what? It's going to be a similar predicament, and this time it's going to be much worse. Because what are they doing? You still have Esau, which were the Romans, but they're here today, okay, in power, and they're trying, but this time they're coming on some, we're going to make you ours. All right, we're going to force our way upon you, and if you resist, well, guess what? It's going to be like another siege all over again. Because these cities are easy thing. These states, these cities, it's light work for them to cut off food supply, cut off waters and all of that, electricity. All right. Now it says, Alexander then let loose among them the 2 Roman legions, and with them 2,000 soldiers who happened to have come from Libya, with fearful consequences for the Jews. He gave the men leave not to merely kill them, but also to plunder their property and burn down their houses. The soldiers rushed into the area called Delta, interesting, Delta, um, where the Jews were concentrated, right? Delta, where the Jews were concentrated. and proceeded to carry out their orders, but not without bloodshed on their own side. For the Jews stood shoulder to shoulder with their most heavily armed men in front and held their ground magnificently. And this is why a lot of people feared Israel, because Israel were a valiant people. Obviously, because our God is a God of war. All right. But when once the line gave, they were destroyed wholesale. Why? Because the Most High had determined that this was Yahushua said it was a time of great vengeance. So it wasn't meant for us to win this. It wasn't meant for us to overcome this. We were to be destroyed, all right, and driven out of our land. It says, death came upon them in every form. Some were overtaken in the open, others driven into their houses, which the Romans first looted, then burnt down. They felt no pity for infants, no respect for the aged. Old and young were slaughtered right and left. And that's what's going to happen in this day again. Okay? So that the whole district was deluged with blood. It was flooded with blood. And 50,000 corpses, all right, were heaped up. Even the remnant would not have survived had they not begged for mercy, till Alexander, pitying them, ordered the Romans to retire. And this was what? This was the wrath of the Most High coming upon Jake. Okay? And this is what the job that Tiberius Julius Alexander did. And guess what? You have Tiberius Julius Alexanders today that are in Esau's system in positions of power that have chosen to side with them, instead. Okay, so now lastly, I'm going to just go here to the siege of Jerusalem, and I might just read this top part, which, I mean, all it is just a quick search. You just type this in Google and you'll get information about it. Okay? Because it is part of the scriptures, so, it's good to, to know about it when you speak on it or when you read about it. Now it says the siege of Jerusalem in the year 70 CE or 70 AD was the decisive event of the First Jewish-Roman War, in which the Roman army captured the city of Jerusalem and destroyed both the city and its temple, all right, which is the second temple. And the thing is, now the third temple being built spiritually, you can't come and destroy it, all right? And if you come and try to destroy us, the Most High, like he said, is going to lift up that standard pursuant to Isaiah 59 and 19. So you can go ahead and try, but it's not going to end well. No, it's not. The Roman army, led by the future emperor Titus, with Tiberius Julius Alexander as his second in command. And the reason it says future emperor was because after Titus's father Vespasian had died, Titus, ruled after him. It says, besieged and conquered the city of Jerusalem, which had been controlled by Judean rebel factions since 66. See? So there was a time, during that time, 66, when Jake had basically driven these Roman legions out. For a little period of time, they were running it. They were controlling it. It says, following the Jerusalem riots of 66, when the Judean provisional government was formed in Jerusalem. The siege of the city began on April 14, or Salakia, began on 14 April 70 CE, 3 days before the beginning of Passover that year. And then it goes in some minor details. It says the siege lasted for about 5 months. It ended in August 70 CE with the burning and the destruction of the second temple. It says the Romans then entered and sacked the lower city, the Ark of Titus, celebrating, which this is still here today, the Ark of Titus. All right, celebrating the Roman sack of Jerusalem, and the temple still stands in Rome. The conquest of the city was completed approximately September 8th, 70 CE. All right, this is just not really thorough or in-depth. All right, just an overview, all right, of what was happening during the siege. But when you actually read in, all right, and go into the calamities, you'll see how much more brutal it was. How there was cannibalism going on in Jerusalem itself, okay, because of the lack of food, and it was chaos, man. But the scriptures say that this time that we're in is going to be so bad that even the siege of Jerusalem is not going to compare to how bad it's going to get now. Okay, so with that, I'm going to end it here. Lord willing, that was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakakudash. Until next time, Shalom.